and welcome listeners again to another fabulous presentation here, episode with a lovely entrepreneur that I'm bringing you today. His name is DKWarinner. I'm going to actually just stop that. Sorry, I didn't actually get the clarification on saying your surname. Warinner?
Warinner is just fine. Yeah.
Warner. All right.
Yeah.
Let's start again.
Yeah.
This is where it's good to get it as a pre-recording.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello and welcome again to another fabulous episode here, bringing you another wonderful entrepreneur. Who's joining us today is DKWarinner. Welcome, DK.
Thank you so much, Sonia. I really appreciate the opportunity to join you here.
It's lovely having you here. As everyone knows, I get very excited and very passionate about bringing such awesome people to their attention and discussing some really great topics. And yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Our topic today, listeners, is finding a safe, stress-free space to pursue your internal dreams. So let me just say that again. I sounded almost like I was having my teeth weren't in properly. So finding a safe, stress-free space to pursue your entrepreneurial dreams. Now, it's a very hot topic, isn't it, DK?
It definitely is, and especially in this time with all of the COVID-19, and of course, who knows how long this broadcast is going to be out there. Maybe it'll be 2022, and we'll still be airing the show. But at this time, COVID-19 has been a horrible issue in this year that we just went through, and just so much disruption that
Absolutely.
I have folks that have never mentioned anxiety and stress ever, and would never be associated with that at all, are starting to mention that as if it's commonplace.
Well, yes. I mean, it certainly has. I mean, it's a bittersweet thing as far as there's been lots of things, good things that have come out of it, as well as a lot of awful things. And I remember being in a live workshop with Simon Sinek even about a month or two ago, and he was recognizing and talking to quite a lot of people, and certainly the various different types of people he deals with, from corporates through to entrepreneurs through to military, and he recognized himself that he was even getting a type of anxiety/stress, and went to investigate it a little bit more, and they had recognized that it's very, very similar patterns and experiences to that of depression. So they are actually calling it COVID anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. I see a lot of the parallels, right? Because if you think of depression, it's essentially anxiety that's already brought you all the way to shut down, right? And I've actually experienced, I would say, although it was never diagnosed, a deep anxiety, a level of depression. Really, what I offer is grown out of my own personal experience over decades of time, either struggling or managing, and then eventually finding a solution to eliminate anxiety.
So we're going to get to your story in just a second. Let me just tell the listeners a little bit about you, and then I'll get you to say your story, because it's a really quite interesting journey that you have been on. And it can be really quite typical for a lot of people, where we start out doing one type of career and what we're doing, and how we transition then into other types of careers/businesses. And the things that we learn along the way can often be still used in the various different types of situations, and we can create better, stronger tools out of it, which you have done to now help our listeners quite a deal. So, all right, listeners, so DK is he's the founder of the DK Method and the host of Center of Calmness. So it's a podcast host that you have, an actual podcast. Center of Calmness is the program of what it's called. DK is also an author. He's written several books, as well as a contributing chapter. But the books cover things from marketing and customer retention, and then through to stress elimination. And he's also Amazon's #1 best-selling co-contributor with the One Habit series for entrepreneurial success. And DK not only is offering programs like Stress to Success and his podcast show, but he also does have past experience in sales and marketing. So he knows about how all of these things evolve and the different sorts of stresses that it can bring about. So some call him Mr. Calm. So he is the founder of the DK method for eliminating stress, anxiety, and overwhelm, taking entrepreneurs and others experiencing high levels of personal and professional stress from stressed out to potentially more success than they ever have had before. So I think that's quite a lot of accolades there, and a really good overview of where you're at. So tell us your story then, DK.
Well, the story as it relates to stress and calmness for me actually started when I was only 2 years old. It was just one of these childhood accidents on the back of a bike with my dad, right? We took a spill. And although the average person would just get up and walk away from such a thing, there was something that was triggered deep inside for me that generated a chronic anxiety, if you will, a syndrome or a panic attack syndrome. And so for years and decades after that, occasionally that would pop up and, at situations where I didn't have the control that I felt or that my mind felt it should have. And so that was something I struggled with through my high school, through my college, and into my professional life. Of course, less and less as my management skills grew, and I was able to achieve quite a bit through that. And I've actually been able to achieve 25 years of corporate experience, as well as a master's degrees in engineering and business both. But through that time, though, of course, I was carrying and building and amplifying a higher and higher level of stress and anxiety in my life, especially as I began to reach for those higher plateaus and, if you will, climbing the corporate ladder. And eventually I reached a point in my corporate life where I was in a bit of a toxic environment. It wasn't the best. I think the company I was at the time is what leads a lot of entrepreneurs to start, right? Because I think that if they go through an experience like that, they're saying, well, I really need a lot more control over my business than what I'm able to get in this corporate environment. And I had reached one of those points where it was just a crushing level of toxic pressure. At this particular company, my anxiety was fully triggered, and I was basically going through a shutdown, or as we were discussing a little bit earlier, perhaps even a depressive state, where it was just very difficult to move forward. And that was the moment where I began asking those deep, meaningful questions of, well, what am I really here to do? What's my real purpose? Is my purpose just to develop a reputation in this company, or do I have something deeper, something that I can aspire to that is really me? And that I began looking for the solution for my chronic anxiety, as well as making changes in my professional career to move forward and really take those first steps toward entrepreneurship. And over time, and with thousands of hours invested, with reaching back into some training I had in my background in martial arts and meditation, as well as some very focused and specialized mentorship, I reached a point where I actually had the solution. And one day, a lot of folks that perhaps are familiar with anxiety and how it works would recognize that when you wake up in the morning and your mind is at peace, often if you struggle anxiety, you'll feel this tension that hits you immediately when you wake up. But one day when I reached the point of solution, I woke up and there was no tension. It was totally clear. And that's when I knew that I had a solution. And then as I went forward and began developing further and began developing that entrepreneurial interest, that's when I began to realize that moment actually became a gift that I could share with others. And I began distilling the practice down into a teachable format. And now it's at the point where I can transfer it to somebody in just a few minutes, take them through an exercise that will generate the benefits that took me years to develop on my own. I can transfer to someone else in just a few minutes. Now, not to say that they're going to reach a permanent resolution for something that deep, but they will have an immediate effect and then be able to practice that same system on their own and be able to move forward. And what I think is very applicable for entrepreneurs, especially in this very rapidly changing and disrupted world, is that there's always a little bit more stress around the corner, right? And so it's so necessary to have a technique like this, so that when you make that turn and that stress begins to rise, that you have an internal discipline to allow you to eliminate the stress and then keep moving forward.
When you say discipline, though, a lot of entrepreneurs sort of go, oh, well, I'm not very disciplined, though. So how could that then become something that entrepreneurs could see, that it's, rather than pushing it away automatically, that they can bring it on with the right heart space, I suppose, and to apply it better?
The beauty behind my system is that it, unlike when we think of discipline, and I'm sure that word perhaps triggered a sort of a different response of, oh wow, you're gonna send me to climb stairs for the next 10 years, and maybe after I've climbed the 100th flight or the 1000th flight, maybe I'll get it. Well, this system is so easy to do that, like I said, in a few minutes you can learn it. And what I mean by discipline is just regular and gentle application of learning to release stress. And the key there is that, and I believe this is true of most people that do get stressed out to the point of being overwhelmed, is that most folks hold on to their stress, and so they'll bottle it up, they'll suppress it, right, and then carry it forward to the next event or situation. And then by the time you reach the 50th or 100th, it's sort of a negative discipline, if you will, a habit, if you will, of just tamping that stress down. But what we teach is when you realize and become aware of the stress, work to actually eliminate and release that tension, bring relaxation. And that's what I mean by discipline. It's not that every day when you get up at 9 a.m. you've got to go through this exercise and then you have to do it again at 3 and at 6. It's that when you learn this system, you've internalized it. You don't have to reach for a pill. You don't have to reach for an appointment book with your therapist. You've got this there within, and then it's a matter of applying it whenever that stress rises. And that's where perhaps discipline is not the right word. It's more practice and just a willingness to react in a positive way to become when we become aware of stress.
Yeah, I was about to say, look, well, it depends on how you see discipline, but what you just added there, I think actually that is, it's really nice to sort of see it that way. And it was a nice explanation there. Thank you. So there are some people, because I tend to be the sort of person that I used to be extremely disciplined when I was very young. And I think that as you get older, then you sort of really push away and you go, oh, now I'm just going to do whatever. And then, it's then we get really carried away and excited, and we love the adrenaline that comes in from being creative and spur of the moment. And I find a lot of entrepreneurs tend to also be that way. There are those that are really disciplined and they're really, really good. Or there's those that say, I have to be under stress. I'm at my best when I'm like that. Or that I have to be, in the mojo and be creative, otherwise it's clipping my wings, or all those sorts of things. And I do know that it creates quite a bit of havoc on the physical body and the mental and emotional states and hormones and all those sorts of things. So what sort of advice could you give us? What's your stance around that? What's your belief systems around that? And how could you assist those that are us that are not so we're disciplined, and those that are?
Well, I don't want to mislead that the system is only applicable by someone who's regimented, disciplined, just taking a stepwise approach. I see that calmness is a great place to allow creativity to be released. Right. I have found in my own process, in my own life, that the most creative thoughts and those epiphany moments come when you can find that, we were talking about the topic, right? That safe space, right? Where and actually within your mind, a safe space can be created. It's not something that someone provides for you. It's something that you open for yourself by just taking a deep breath, finding that moment and just saying, okay, what can I reflect and allow myself to receive from a creative standpoint. And calmness is a huge weapon when it comes to that, where when you learn a system like mine, that calmness can be generated any place, anytime, instantly, once you have a bit of practice at it. And I don't mean discipline. It's not going to take 10 years to get there. I'm talking about first shot in 10 minutes. And then as one practices perhaps 3, 4, 5, 10 times, it becomes familiar. And each time that you go through the process, you're actually ratcheting your base stress level down farther and farther, to the point where as you go through life, you're manifesting that calmness. And from there, the intuition tends to rise. And so it actually supports a creative process. Now, I would say for the individual that thinks that they're better driven by stress, yes, maybe. I mean, I used to drive myself that way, especially earlier. I mean, in order for me to do any achievements whatsoever with the level of anxiety that I suffered earlier in life, I had no choice but to find a way to channel that stress into forward motion. And it does produce forward motion, but at a cost. And it's a matter of how much of a toll do you want to take on your health, which you need, right, to enjoy the wealth that you're looking to produce. Whereas instead of allowing the stress to be the driver, allow your vision to be the driver, right? Set that vision and clarity and the strategic plan that is between you and your vision, and let that drive you. And that allows for a much more deliberate approach where it's not the individual darting back and forth from task to task under stress and being able to accomplish that way, but set the plan and then create that center of calmness, as I say. And then you can enjoy the journey as you go down those steps and hit those mileposts.
I love what you've said in that. And I had to just write it down. Let your vision be the driver. I think that would be such an awesome mantra / affirmation for people to really embody. I think that is so true. When you evolve in your different types of job roles and businesses and those sorts of things, and you get older and you start to ask those big questions, as you said, you can see then that the times where you've tried to get it in a physical way, that the stress as a driver, it hasn't served as much as when you've allowed vision to be your driver. Like you said, it's the same thing as when people, they say, oh, I have to have a coffee in the morning, otherwise I'm just not. Well, hold on, that's not going to do you good in the long run. And why should we have to rely on a external stimulus like that when we have everything within our reach? And yes, coming back to our topic being that finding a safe, stress-free space to pursue your entrepreneurial dreams. We spoke just prior to coming onto this interview as to the interpretation of space. Do you want to just take us down that journey a little bit more about what people could see as, that what is that stress-free space? What does that look like? What should we be trying to achieve?
Absolutely. So yeah, as we were talking before, Sonia, we talked about a lot of folks interpret space as a physical space. Of course I just have my backdrop here, but the space around our desk or our workspace versus our family space. And of course that is the beginning. If you wish to apply some feng shui or some Zen principles toward designing a space where you can sit and reach a stress-free state, that's great. But that's kind of like the coffee, right? That's still external. And if you think of it, those Zen elements, if you will, are doing nothing more than impacting your mind, right? And so if you think of the fact that the mind has such a tremendous creative power, really that same state can be created any place and any time, whether you're sitting in that safe space in your own home or at your well-designed office. Actually, if you're in front of the CEO of a company who's super mad at you because you didn't deliver to their expectations, you can actually create a safe space right in front of that individual as well.
Yeah.
Through the use of your mind and through the practice of a simple system to essentially de-escalate and release stress on the fly, essentially. So when I think of a safe space, I see it definitely as what I call a mindscape. So if you look at what's in your mind, and part of my system actually involves just observing, right? Applying mental focus to a point right in the middle of your brain and just observing the thought energy, what's going on there. You mentioned creativity and allowing all that to flow and perhaps even jumping from project to project. Actually, that generates some stress, right, when you do that. And I don't necessarily recommend for creative folks that they would stop doing that, because that's where the ideas come from. And so you want to allow that process to continue, but without assuming the stress that can come from focusing on so many things at once, right? So it's important to keep all that in mind, but then also bring that stress level and the interaction between all of those ideas, projects, concepts, worries, concerns, joys, and fears all at once, by just letting all of that settle out and create that state of calmness, that state of relaxation, without losing any of the information. And actually, when you do that, it's very healthy, right? It allows those connections to form. And I have understood that, and it's worked this way in my own life too, that if you develop and put all the energy into defining all of these new ventures, ideas, concepts, and then actually you put them away for a time, it's amazing what ideas form, and often they're even much larger scale ideas than if you would have kept all those balls in the air simultaneously for all that time and carried all the stress along with it. So just taking that step back in your mind and opening that safe space, which hopefully is becoming a little bit clearer the more we talk about it here. But I see it definitely as central within the mind, and it's in a way how you manage your mind and the processes of the thoughts as they go through and as they process, and then as they deliver the epiphanies and those ideas that bring us results.
I like that. Yes. So, and also, I suppose just to circle back to what you also said there with the CEO, for those that are the CEO, they could also be using that interpretation for conflict with clients or with staff or with suppliers, all of those sorts of things that in the moment you can do it. And we had previously spoken about, prior to this interview, about it getting to that level where you can actually do it on the fly and in that moment, which takes quite a bit of practice.
A little bit, yes.
Yeah. Especially if you're a person who likes to really get emotional and passionate. I'm the passionate one. And sometimes people say, oh gosh, don't yell, or you're getting a bit full on, or you're getting emotional, or that you're being too strong. Well, it's passion. So, and it's not meant for any sort of attacking or all those sorts of things. So what sort of tips could you give someone who is like that, who is the CEO, but they can get quite passionate and dealing with the stresses that tend to present themselves?
Actually, as you mentioned it, Sonia, the CEO is in a very difficult spot because they have their employees, they have their customers, their shareholders and board members and suppliers, and there's a lot less control than it looks like there is when
Yes.
you're the person in the
You're
middle, if you will, right?
Control.
Yeah, the person held responsible. But there's a lot of machines or machinery, if you will, set in motion that really passes outside the individual's sphere of control. And I think that although I can definitely respect the passionate response that occasionally must occur, and actually what I teach doesn't conflict with that at all, although it may seem so. And what I would say to that individual is that, of course, most of those relationships cannot be easily severed, right? And so whether it's to a supplier, whether it's to a very low level employee, or to a customer, if there's an issue that's outside of the control that is causing your stress to rise, perhaps the anger and frustration to rise, well, you're going to want to work with that individual tomorrow or the next week or the next quarter, because especially in the customer's case, that's where your revenue is coming from. And you're going to want the advice of that board member. And so these relationships they're continuous. And so the opportunity that obtaining a Center of Calmness provides is that even when you need to express passion or express deep levels of anger, concern, all of those very useful and effective emotional types of communication, by taking the tension away first, the internal tension and that bottled up stress, what it does is that it allows you to be very intentional with that passion. So it's not that the passion generated or the frustration or concern generated from, say, a supplier then gets transferred to the employee per se, who may not actually be responsible for that customer's issue or the issue that the CEO has with that particular customer or partner. But by taking the tension away, then if you think of a drum, right? The membrane on a drum, if it's taut, then everything that hits it sends a lot of vibration out into the air, right? And everyone around can hear that. But if it's not taut, then it's just a dull thud, and the energy is mostly absorbed and not transferred, right? So if you have calmness up front, then not only do you have clarity to deal with this customer or board member here at the left, but also when the employee issue hits you on the right, it's not going to amplify the issue you're already dealing with, and you'll be able to remain present in the moment with the employee and deal with them in I wouldn't necessarily say a more rational manner, because we're talking about the ability to communicate emotionally as well, but you'll be able to measure your response a lot more easily because that tension hasn't built, and then it takes the involuntary component of the response out. right? And then if you need to express, some level of passion toward the employee also, well, then you decide how much to express, and you're fully in control.
And for those that are also listening to this and they're thinking, well, I'm not a big company, but I'm still in, whether I'm new in my business or I'm still a solopreneur, or I've just got a couple of people, but they're contractors. Would you say that all of these sorts of concepts that we're talking about, as well as the techniques that you use, are they the same? Is this all still transferable?
100%. I see the smaller scale entrepreneur is under just as much stress, potentially more. At least I wouldn't say under stress as much as under opportunities for stress, because the way when you get used to working with a system like mine, you decide how much stress you want to carry. It's totally in your control, and stress is it's a response more than it is a requirement. I know that there's a bit of a stereotype that a lot of work must mean a lot of stress, but it's really how are you managing things internally, and are you able to create that safe space that we're talking about to move forward in the entrepreneurial activities that we find ourselves in. Even if you're small, you still have suppliers. You still perhaps have automation systems, especially these days. A lot of folks are using these funnels and other things that they break down right from time to time. and when they do, and inevitably they will, how will you respond? And how long will it take you out of the game before you reach a point of calmness, you jump back in, you go get the support you need, perhaps somebody who's got more experience, you humble yourself and ask for help, whatever you need to do, and really calmness produces agility for the small business and for the entrepreneur, perhaps on a smaller scale, or that does not have this large organization to be concerned with.
Some really, really good ideas that you're giving us there. And as you're talking, I'm getting all these different sort of situations that are popping up in my head and those sorts of things. There's a couple of things still I want to ask you in amongst that, though. So say, for example, I know, when I've gone to the doctors and they're going, well, how's your stress levels? I'm like, well, you need to be in control, you need to be more calm, or you need this, that. Like, well, hold on a minute. Other than what I have got control over, there's the things that I don't have control over or will never be able to have control over. But also sometimes with what we have going on in our life, it's not like I can magically get rid of it. So say, for example, my youngest son is on mild autism, and those sorts of things have its stresses, the meltdowns, the whole, things, kit and caboodle that go with that. So there are some people that will always have more on their plate and more types of stresses, and there's quite a lot involved when it comes to dealing with that, as well as coordinating, still being in a role position of great responsibility. So what sort of advice could you give around that?
Sonia, that actually is very similar to the smaller entrepreneurial situation that we just discussed, where there's so much agility required. And I can definitely resonate with what you're talking about. I actually have 8 children, as well as the Center of Calmness podcast, as well as the program that I'm in the middle of launching, as well as a corporate job. All at once. What's cool about the corporate job is that it keeps me engaged with the corporate culture, and I see a lot of applications for my system at corporate, as well as in entrepreneurial scenarios, and I actually work with both kinds of clients. But it's these. I think of it as switching, right? So each of those flavors that you mentioned, your son and his concerns, your entrepreneurial concerns, the event planning that we were discussing before, and each one of those has its own set of challenges. And what I see is that we generally can only focus on one thing at a time. But how quickly can we switch? I think of Elon Musk, who's a well-known heavy task switcher, if you will, right? Where he can switch, I think it's either every 5 minutes or every 15 minutes, and he plans his day out in a very granular detail. But where calmness helps is it allows you to unpack from the situation you had before, say it was with your son, and then readjust and fully apply yourself with no residual stress from that prior event into the next one, whether it's working with a new client, whether it's fixing something in your business, or fixing a tech issue if you're a smaller business and you don't have a staff to do that for you, or if you have a larger company you're running, dealing with that employee that's got an issue, or a supplier that didn't deliver. And each one of those, as we switch, if we don't want that stress amplification, that's where we apply the calmness technique to allow us to come down, bring that instant calmness, and then go right in with full energy into that next requirement that we have.
I really like that you use the language of switching, because technically we can't do two things at once as far as it being to 100%. So I know a lot of mums would say, what? You know, that whole argument that's out there, that whole multitasking, but they certainly have proven that multitasking in itself actually lowers productivity, uses up more time, energy, effort, and sometimes therefore money as a result. So, and certainly for entrepreneurs, it's something that we're having to be very aware of all the time, because we are juggling so many projects and tasks. So technically it's about switching from your focus from one to the next. And I was reading, and I really couldn't remember, I can't recall the whole details, but I know I was reading about it in the last week or two, actually, about the time loss and the lowering of productivity when you switch from one thing to another, and where you can then get centered and then come up to the speed that you would normally apply and be fully focused. So would you suggest then, if you're suggesting at the moment that with the switching to place these calming techniques between when you're doing the switch from one thing to another, that we could do this, would you suggest then that we should be doing this more regularly? Does it benefit to do it more regularly?
As far as applying the calmness techniques, I would say definitely, yeah. And I think it's more and more important as there's more switching required. In a way, it's almost like a utopian scenario, right? If an individual can just get on track and just run the track all day, right? And have no disturbances, and then at the end of that track have, you know, unbelievable result and wonderful levels of revenue and happy family and everything, right? So
yeah, that whole
unrealistic,
everything that we want.
Right. But in real life, we do have a lot of those switching requirements, and I would say definitely that with a little bit of practice and a little bit of awareness, it's a matter of when stopping a task and on the way to switch to the next, just to get a sense quickly of how do you feel, right? So when you're finished, you're dealing with, if your son had in the case that you mentioned, if your son had a brief meltdown, once that meltdown's done and you're ready to move and you're actually on the way to the next task, just say, well, okay, how do I feel, right? Is my tension higher? Have I really stepped out of a calmness, and am I agitated or irritated or frustrated at this moment? No fault, of course, of your son, but just how do I feel, right or wrong, doesn't matter. And then when you get a sense of that energy, if there is a disturbance there, then apply the principle of instant calmness, apply the techniques in my system, and allow that stress energy to dissipate and release, reach that point of calmness, and now you'll find yourself much clearer and much faster into that next task with more confidence and with a lot less worry of, well, what did I just leave behind? You know, did I leave something unfinished there? No, actually not, right? That event's over, and there's no need to carry it into the next. And I think a lot of folks do make the mistake of carrying the last four things right into the next thing, and then their stress level is really turning high at that point. So I think it's so important to release the past and be fully present in the moment on whatever it is that we're focused on in that moment. And so that's where I see that like you said, in the process of switching from A to B, just take that point in between, which there always is one, even if it's just a microsecond, and just allow that energy to release and clarify. And I think we'll find a much more effective result as we move into that task B, with more energy, more confidence, more control,
more focus, so then for more productivity. I like it. And you know what, isn't it shocking sometimes, like we can go through these times where we know it, and we've perhaps done it in the past and we've forgotten it because we've gotten into other habits again. As you're talking about it, I was like, oh, of course, like what did I used to do? I'm always doing these little audits, and like, am I doing that now? No, I haven't been. Oh my gosh. And I tell other people about it. So I need to do that. I need to find out what your methods are, like your techniques. Going to have to be, definitely, as I'm encouraging all of the listeners to do, and to be part of your program. It's applying it regularly. Yeah. Oh, you mentioned something earlier about base level, and so I know that we've been talking for a little while, but I just thought, this could be a little bit of an interesting thought to let people know about their anxieties and their base levels and how it can continue to elevate and improve. I'll let you talk about that. Go for it.
Sure. Of course, it's easy to talk about base level from the point of view of anxiety, because you can think of anxiety as an amplifying engine, and especially as it remains unresolved and new triggers form and are metabolized, no matter how good we are at suppressing that anxiety, it tends to create a vicious cycle where that base level of tension, and that's what I mean by base level. We all carry a certain amount of tension, otherwise we wouldn't be alive, most likely. I know of very few, if any, individuals that have zero tension. So it's just a matter of, well, how much tension is there? Is it at a 10, or is it at a full red alert state, or is it at a 1 or 2, extremely calm? I actually use the analogy of an ocean stirred up, with very high surf. Of course, it's great for surfers, but not so good for swimmers, right? Or the still smooth pond, like I have in my backdrop
in
here,
the background, yeah.
where you can see your own reflection in the water, right? And that's a very visceral symbol of calmness, right? When you can see your own reflection, works in your mind as well. When you're able to reflect on your life and what's around you, that's a way to it's an evidence of calmness, right? And so, and most folks, as I have experienced, are not really aware of the level of stress that they've built up over the years, based on all the different scenarios that we've already discussed. And so it's just so important to step back just for a moment, find that safe space, and just observe what's the real tension level, even in your physical body, even as you look at all of your muscle systems. How much tension just being carried, and how your muscles are there, right? Are you fully relaxed, or do you find some tension in your shoulders? Maybe
I'm just trying to relax right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I was noticing, my shoulders are. They're like,
right.
Yes.
These days we're all on screens. The eyes will build up tension and hold it, and these are ways to get a sense of how much tension, because the body is in essence an expression of the mind. Yeah. Right. And as you go deeper, you can realize, well, I've got a lot of deep emotional tension. Easy to detect when something comes in that's surprising or disturbing to you, and you just sense your level of frustration that just erupts right from your being, from the core of your being, instantly, when something's not going right. And if that frustration level that just comes out of nowhere is extremely high, well, that's a sign of a very high base level of tension, right? Because otherwise, if you're not tense, then you're not going to react, quite so violently, if you will, internally, right? And that's where the DK method helps to ratchet that base level of tension down. And with regular practice, you can bring that 10 down to a 1 or a 2. And then when you're approaching new situations, you're starting out not at a 10, but at a 2. And it's so much easier to bring in those new situations, scenarios where you would think, wow, that's really going to stress that individual out because they've been under so much pressure from this or that. Well, if they apply a method like the DK method, you can take that stress level and tension level down to the point where they can take in that new issue, and they might appear completely unfazed and actually be observably calm.
So really, also this method is extremely valuable, even for those that are listening there, to encourage, whether it's their employees or others that they work with regularly, to encourage them to participate in it too, because it becomes it's a win-win-win, really, that everyone, and you're achieving your objectives a whole lot quicker and more effectively. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you can't imagine the power of having an entire team that's running around
Yes.
fairly calm most of the time.
Yeah.
Normally there's one or two folks out of balance, right? And then that tends to whip the whole
Yes.
team around. But if you've got everything in balance like this, then you'd be
Yeah.
amazed at what can be
I
accomplished.
have experienced that, and it's just this magic synergy, and that's what I love to try to find within groups. Oh, it's beautiful. Okay,
Absolutely.
so you tend to work a lot with overworked professionals and on their entrepreneurial journeys. How have you actually, how have your clients benefited from your programs?
What they find is a different, it really, when we're talking about base stress level, what they find is that they no longer have to accept stress as an inevitable a reality by default, right? And so because of applying my methods, then they are able to bring that sense of calmness and apply all the energy that they were losing from dealing with and metabolizing and suppressing stress, and apply it into their entrepreneurial ventures and move forward and really enjoy the journey a lot more than they did before, where that stress no longer continues to build, but now they have a practical method I don't want to say in their back pocket, but internalized, that they have always available without having to reach out for regular therapy appointments, nutraceuticals, drugs of any kind. And they have this method always at the ready, available to apply and bring that instant calmness. And it just provides them so much clarity, confidence, and control that gives them the ability to move forward and with all their energies toward fulfilling their passion, their purpose.
Nice. So where can people find your programs?
I actually have a webinar coming up very soon where I can introduce the program in much more detail to any of your listeners that would be interested. I
Yeah.
believe we'll probably put that link in the notes.
Yes.
And anyone who's interested as well can reach out to me at my email address at relaxmedk@gmail.com.
Beautiful. Lovely. I love that. So then, okay, what's on the horizon for you in 2021? So you have this webinar around the corner. Tell us a little bit more about the webinar, and then also what's on the rest of the horizon for you in 2021.
The webinar is going to get a group of folks together to really go through and just discuss in detail all the elements of the system. We've touched on several, and I've I've hinted at a few things, right? We haven't gone through all of the elements here in sequence.
Yep.
And so not only will we go through all of those details in sequence and explain how everything works and more particularly how it all fits together, but what I like to do in each one of these webinars is we actually go through what I call a workout. And so for 10 minutes, we actually take folks through a quick start version of the system where we first set up an element they want or a goal they want to achieve, right? And then point the calmness and the relaxation toward setting the mind up to achieve that objective. And so it's great from a visualization, and as we discussed earlier, to set the vision as the front running driver for whatever it is they wish to achieve. And we also leverage a point of perfect peace from their past, right, that allows them to get in the right state to then go after that vision without any hindrance and without holding themselves back. And so we actually do that during the webinar itself, which actually is a way of me paying it forward and just really giving folks the gift of what I've learned over many years of practice and development, really in just a few minutes time. So this webinar coming up is focused mostly on the individual accomplishments, and then what I intend to do in 2021 as we go forward into the year is to cast this into more of a corporate team training scenario where I would approach a corporate team and train the entire team, as we were discussing earlier, which gives the whole group the opportunity then to enjoy this same technique, the same ability to achieve calmness as they attack the various goals that they have as a group.
How powerful for a lot of businesses that they can incorporate that, and no matter how small, medium, or large their organization is, that they can actually introduce that and to really start to turn those tables around that are the ripple effect that stresses cause, both that stress causes to an individual as well as to a team as well as to an organization, with the ripple effect even with their clients and the suppliers, and really that they can be a whole lot more empowered. I just love that. I think that is so important. I have personally witnessed some organizations that do it and have had some really great results, both in their top line with their revenue as well as their bottom line. And certainly there's the organizations that don't. Let's not talk about them. So
right. Fair enough.
I think, can everyone hear that I'm very pro what you do?
Glad to hear that. Thank you.
And I think that, everyone that if they were to go forward and to talk to you more and get involved with you, they're going to be certainly in safe hands. So what is the offer that you would like to provide the listeners?
What I would like to offer your audience, Sonia, is the opportunity to go through this process, not only at the webinar, which they'll have the invite for, but also one-on-one. So I offer what I call a 15-minute free success activation session where we discuss your listeners' specific goals and apply the process that I offer, the DK method, directly to their scenario and allow them to move forward then with this great sense of calmness and inner peace that's really tailored for whatever stresses they're currently experiencing, where they're able to release those and move forward with the clarity and confidence and control that we've all seen in the past. But as we get stuck with the different types of stress that's coming in, that perhaps we're being held back. And really that's the opportunity they offer, that on an individual basis, a free 15-minute success activation session where we clear those obstacles and really get the individuals focused on their vision and goals going forward from a sense of calmness.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. So that's certainly going to help them both in a professional sense as well as a personal sense. I think that's lovely, getting that from Mr. Calm himself. Look, I thank you very much for that offer and for your time today. So before we do a sign off, is there any last minute things you might want to say?
Sonia, I've just really appreciated all the different questions that you've asked, and I think we've had a chance to explore the issues of stress and the opportunity to provide calmness as, if you will, an antidote to stress in a lot of different scenarios. And so I really appreciate we've been very comprehensive with our conversation. It's been great, and I just invite folks to find that safe space to continue their entrepreneurial dreams and really generate tons of success in 2021. And I'm here to support you all.
Oh, that's lovely, lovely. And thank you so much again for helping everyone that's listening, and all of your friends and colleagues, people, tell them all about Mr. Calm's podcast show too. They're the Center of Calmness. So, all right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it, Sonia. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.